All right, here we go. Welcome back from spring break to biology class. I hope that you got some time to relax. Relaxing is important as much as possible these days. Um, but we do have 7 weeks or so uh, until the end of the year, and we're going to spend all 7 weeks like this, looking at a little square of my face in the corner. So, to me, that means that the number one goal, other than like learning stuff, is to make things as interesting as possible. So I'm sitting around on the break thinking about what to do. And before the break, we were talking about evolution. The manatee assignment was the last assignment of that unit. And now we're going to start a new unit about the body systems, about human body. Technically, this would be called anatomy and physiology, with a little bit of growth and development thrown in there, to be precise. I know that I'm already starting and it's not that interesting, but hopefully it'll get there. Um, in any case, uh, this video is going to be kind of a bridge between the two things, right? Evolution and human bodies, right? And so, in the interest of trying to be interesting, I thought of this thing called persistence hunting, which I think will be cool. But before we get there, let's remind ourselves that the whole evolution unit, one of the big ideas here is that all of the organisms shown on this gigantic tree of life arose from two things: natural selection and speciation, right? Another way of saying that is that natural selection has led to adaptations. Organisms have been changing to adapt to fit to their different environments, and they've had a long time to do this, and they've spread out to all these different niches to exhaust every possible way of life. And so humans, of course, are on here, way down here in the bottom corner. So if I just kind of look at this, just the mammal section of this, to go to another cladogram that I've shown you before of just mammals, and way back here is the original mammal. And if you follow this over here, away from the manatees, towards the rodents, but then make a little turn over here to the primate group, you of course will reach down here where it says hominidae, which is a hominid, which is a fancy way of saying things that look like humans. And that, of course, includes humans. So we have our adaptations for our environment, just like all these other organisms have their adaptations for their environments. So I was thinking, what are those adaptations, right? And so the number one adaptation is that we walk on 2 feet. Now I know this dude right here, he's walking on 2 feet like that, but that is not normal for a gorilla. I forget the backstory about why this dude's walking like that. But the important thing here is that it's the way he's walking, with his little waddle, and his arms are swinging back and forth to keep his balance. He's kind of swaying back and forth, and his hips move a lot, right? Because he's not designed to walk that way. He almost looks cute until you remember that if you get close to him, he'll probably rip you in half. His arms are super long. His legs are super short. His hips are not designed properly for walking like this, right? But yours are. Humans are designed to walk upright. And this makes us more efficient and more versatile. On the ground, the gorilla is going to win. In the trees, the chimps are going to win. But in between that, if you had an environment that was kind of foresty, but also kind of open, then something in between would be better. And that's us, something that can climb, but also can go on the ground. Not very good at either of those things comparatively, but still good at all those things. And that's kind of a theme for humans, is that we're good at generalizations. So once our ancestors started walking on 2 feet, then they lost all their hair. This dude has a genetic mutation that makes him not grow any hair. But I think it's interesting to see that underneath all that fur, a chimp's body looks a lot like a super ripped human body. They are very muscly, and they will also rip you in half if you really get close to them. The ones you see in the movies where they're like your little friend and stuff, I don't think that that's how it would work out in nature. But humans lost our hair, and that's important because this allows us to do something that a lot of other animals can't do. Humans and I think horses and elephants are the only other animals that can sweat because we don't have a lot of hair, or in our case, not very much hair. Although I have gotten more hair thanks to the quarantine, more than even usual. But most of our bodies, other than our heads, are hairless. Of course, our really number one trait is our brains, right? Like we're arguably, probably not arguably, we're definitely the smartest species on the planet, although we do dumb things. But this graphic is showing that our ancient ancestors that were basically chimps that could walk upright, they didn't have very big brains. And then our brains got a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And actually, this is weird that they went a little bit smaller here. A Neanderthal had a bigger head. They had these huge heads. But in this case, smaller is better because our brains are actually more compact. They're tighter, they're wired better and more efficient, right? So at some point, getting bigger wasn't better. Getting smarter was better. And getting smarter allowed us to do a lot of cool things. Language, of course, is, as far as we know, the humans are the only ones that do it. Who knows what the dolphins and the whales are doing? But I'm pretty sure they can't compare to what we've done. One interesting thing about languages is that they evolve. This picture is showing like a family tree of languages. And for those of you taking foreign languages, right, like you might have noticed that there's a lot of overlap between words in Spanish and French especially. There's definitely a lot of overlap from Spanish and English too. There are a lot of words that seem very similar. But that's also because English kind of just steals words from all over the place. That's one of the things that English is known for, is just absorbing other languages. But the idea, and the other thing I like about this picture, is that it just shows the huge variety of languages out there. And the important thing about language is that language and then writing allows you to communicate information. And this leads to technology. This might not look like technology, but this is one of the very first technologies, like literally the Stone Age. This is called a hand axe. And these things are found all over the place where our ancestors' fossils are found. And the important thing here is that this is more than just like a sharp rock. Our ancestors had to make this, and you have to take a very particular kind of rock and hit it with another kind of rock, and you have to know the difference between the rocks, and you have to hit it in just the right way to make this very particular shape, especially considering that they had to make a spot that wasn't sharp where you could put your hands, and then all the other places over here are super, super, super sharp. And they use this for like, eventually you can see that it looks kind of like a giant arrowhead, and eventually they would have made those into arrowheads, but you would use this to like just cut stuff like a knife, whatever we would use knives for these days, right? But this is something you got to learn. This is not something that you just figure out on your own. That our ancestors worked hard on this, and they slowly learned how to do this and pass it down, and you had to talk about it. Making fire. Fire is like the next technology that our ancestors were able to develop. And if you've ever tried to make a fire without using fire, right? Like that's a weird thing, that usually to make fire, you need fire in the first place. It takes a lot of work. It takes knowledge. You can do it by hitting rocks together, like sometimes you might see in a cartoon, but it's usually super difficult to do that. You need just the right kind of rocks, and it doesn't always work that way. In this movie with Tom Hanks called Castaway, it's a pretty realistic version where you like rub sticks together, right? Like, but it's not like, again, in the cartoons where like you rub it and it like flames up. Like it's this huge process, and it's super hard, and you have to learn it, and you have to talk about it, and you have to get advice from other people who have tried it. And then once somebody figures it out, then you can tell it to somebody else. And these are things that other species can't do, right? So this is what makes humans human: our ability to walk and sweat and think. But again, where's this persistence hunting thing coming in that I was talking about? The other thing that humans are the best at, we're not the best at very many things other than thinking. We're not the strongest. We aren't the fastest. We're not the toughest. Um, but one thing we can do is run. We can run a long way. So persistence hunting is thought of as one of the oldest ways of hunting, and it's based on the idea that humans can just run longer and forever, endurance running. And you know, this got me thinking about that people do this nowadays, right? Like they run forever. Some of you guys run for fun. Obviously, that is not me. People run long distances for fun. Like a marathon, of course, is super long, 26 miles. But then there's these things called ultra marathons. And I was looking this up on the good old Wikipedia, right? And these people ran 100 miles in the 11 and a half hours, right? Like this dude ran for 11 hours straight. That is ridiculous, right? Or down here, I found out that there's these other versions where they don't even tell you how long the race is. They say, you run for 12 hours and we'll see how far you go. And this lady ran 149 kilometers, which is something like 95 miles in 12 hours. And humans can do this, and even horses and other animals can't do these kinds of things, right? So your job this week is to go on to good old Power School. See if I can get there. Oh, nope, that is not the screen I thought it was going to be. That's all right. Here's Power School. And you're going to click on the appropriate link on Power School for whatever period you're in. And that's going to take you to this document, which is just a Google form. And you can watch the video and you answer some questions. And yeah, that's it. And then you have until like Sunday to do that. And then I'll take your answers and I'll incorporate them into the next step where we start to learn more and more about human bodies. So this is one of those things like it was like we used to do in class, like it's kind of like a warm-up. The more thoughtful you are, the better your answers, the better I can try to tailor things towards what is necessary or what you want. So let me know if you have any questions. Hit me up on Google Hangouts or whatnot. And yeah, there we go. Good luck.